Okay, welcome to the webinar. Those of you joining us, I'm just kicking this off, so letting we got about 30 seconds to wait to get this thing going and letting everybody get in the room. And want to make sure you can hear me. So we'll do some of this preliminary stuff. Last time I did this, I messed it up, so I forgot to hit broadcast. So if you can throw in the chat, if you can hear me, just at least one or two of you can throw in there that you can hear. You should see a chat box to the side, and we should be able to get ready to go. And let's see if we got that enabled for everyone. Yes, we do. And let's see. Looks like we welcome you in here. We've got a couple people just now dropping in, Donna and Leah and Stephanie and Lois, and thank you for joining us. And anyway, if you can let me know, somebody can shout out to me and let me know you can hear. Okay, let's get in a couple of you saying you can hear. Awesome. Thank you very much. Never know on my setup of these kind of things that we want to do this and do this right. So I'm gonna we got still a couple of people popping in here and to the room or to the video room. I'm gonna go over the lay of the land here, just for those of you that may not be familiar. You should see a screen to your right. Obviously, you've probably already seen that. It's the chat box, and I'll let you know. You should see on the big screen to your left. It says what math is next for your high schooler, and it should be our title screen. And if you're not seeing those things, if you'll let me know, but that's what I've got displaying, at least on my side, the slides. And what I'm going to do on this one is we're going to we do these webinars about once a month, and I'm going to try to ask questions. You can ask questions at any time, throw them in the chat box. And you can also contact me directly at dcallahan@askdrcallahan.com. Contact us on Facebook. I'm not always the one answering the Facebook, but if you can contact us at any time and ask us questions, anything related to this. That's one thing we spend a lot of time doing, is answering questions primarily to homeschool moms, sometimes the dads, but a lot of it's the moms. But just to show you, we are a live webinar, and let's see if we've got, yep, there I am. So I am, hi, I'm Dale Callahan, and I'm here to join you and show you the webinar. So we are doing this live just to show you that we are real people, and there's not just a robot behind the machine here. Well, let me jump in here. I think we got plenty of time to cover all of this and answer questions, but one of the key things that we get in our company, and let me see if I can't jump you over to our current website. Let me do a different screen share here. See if this is correct. Nope, that is not correct. All right. Just to make sure we're complete and we're talking about things correctly, and if I can get this button to do what I want it to do. This is our website. I am showing you now. Some of you have been to it, but this is the website that we offer homeschool high school math. Now, that's not really what I'm talking about. It's obviously because we offer homeschool math products. That's why a lot of people contact us. Our math is college-based math for people that may be heading into college. And well, actually, there's the screen. So that should be the screen you're seeing there is our homeschool math curriculum page, which is at AskDrCallahan.com. Now, so with that said, let me jump back over to the screen that we are talking about today, which is the PowerPoint deck, and that you should now go back and see what math is next for your high schooler. Let's get this started. So I'm going to walk you through this. We do have a handout that's available to you, and you can find that at, let me see if I can get over there. Well, I'll give you the link here in just a second. I thought it was right there on that screen. Is it at the askdrcallahan.com/webinar is where it's going to be. And I'll show you the link to that in just a minute, just to make it easier. I'll also put that over in the chat page just to make it even easier. And it is going to be where you can get the handout that we're going to use. It's not really what I'm talking off of today, but it is the handout that's got the references to a little bit more detail than what we're talking about right now. So I'm Dr. Callahan. You can find our websites. I have two websites. One is the AskDrCallahan.com. That's where we primarily are focused on homeschool math. And my site, which is more related to what I do to the university, which I'm focused on working with professionals, helping them to take control of their time, their career, and their money. And obviously, oddly enough, the two of these things are heavily related. I'm a faculty member of the School of Engineering. So a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about perspective, I'm with the University of Alabama at Birmingham. I'm a faculty at the School of Engineering. So the perspective I'm talking about is as a faculty member looking at high school students that are coming in to our university. So just to give you that backdrop of what we're thinking about. Now, what we're going to cover today is these core questions, and obviously the bottom is anything question you get. We get lots and lots of questions again, and they usually fall in these areas. Why do you guys use college material? Math, scope, and sequence. How do I decide what next? And that's always an interesting situation. Almost every parent we talk to has a unique situation. So if you feel like, hey, my situation's unique, my son or daughter has this unique situation, and that I have this challenge, I guess you can find it comical that they're all unique and they're a lot the same, or you can find it comforting that a lot of the challenges that you're having homeschooling, and with the math in particular, that a lot of people have the same problems. And that's really the kind of things we're going to talk about today. Let me get back over here to my slide deck. Here's the link. I've already put that in the sidebar in the chat room to link to that. And from that, you can get to the thing, and you can download it's a PDF file, and it's got more stuff. Again, you don't really need it right now per se, but it's great information. Some of the stuff that we're covering, it's more detailed than what I'm covering here because of just room on a PowerPoint slide. Now, here's just one of the things that we have discovered over the years, and my wife wanted me to point this out to you, is we find often that parents didn't really like math in high school and college. They don't like math now. The word math breaks them out into the heebie-jeebies, and they just feel rough about it. They just don't. And because of that, they transfer their fear or dislike to their student, to their sons and to their daughters. So, one of the things is be careful of that, because if you are saying, hey, I hate math, I'm looking for a math program for you, their immediate reaction is, I hate math. We talk to a lot of the students, and they tell us they hate math, and our support people will talk to them, and they hate math. And actually, they're pretty good at math, and they seem to enjoy the math, but they're caught up in the thinking that math is this kind of evil thing that's out there. It's not. I liken math to grammar, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but grammar was not the most fun thing for me. Still is not. I'm not a grammar person. I don't really like punctuating, stuff like that. But understanding enough grammar, and maybe I don't understand enough, but understanding enough grammar is what helps me communicate. The end goal of the grammar is to be able to read and write. Well, the end goal of math is just like grammar. Math is a language. It's really just that. If you're doing Spanish and French and English and math is just a language, but instead of understanding the written word, math is to understand the universe. It's understand relationships. And that's really all it is. And it looks complicated and it looks esoteric and everything else, but it's just relationships. How does the pressure in the tire that you're driving on relate to the temperature outside? How, how is the your altitude related to your pressure, for those of you that like to cook and you understand that altitude can have a difference? How does the humidity impact cooking and boiling points? And they're just relationships, and they're mathematical in nature. And that's what we're trying to get this. So that's all math is. So when you think about math, just think about it's another language, and it may be a foreign language to you, but as we look at it with our children, try to help them understand this is a language, but it's a language. Instead of understanding written word, it's understanding the universe around us, understand how business operates and those kind of things. And that's what math is going to be. That's my view of math. Maybe that's a simple view, but let me drive into a couple of the key questions that we always get. Why do you use college math? What's driving you guys to do this? So I'm going to just tell you how we got started in this company, because I think that's part of what's going on. When we accidentally started this company, we pulled our two oldest daughters out of a private school, a very high-end private school. It was an awesome school, but we felt called to homeschool. Now, as we did, we started looking at what math we should be using, and we started following what all the homeschoolers follow. And we found those math books to be terrible for high school math. It's what we were doing then. So we started exploring what it is that works. And being at the university, I went over to the math department and I said, what is it about calculus? As we're bringing students into engineering, they're not ready for math. And that's just true. That's just a blanket statement at any university in the United States, probably in the world. Students coming into engineering are not ready for math and the calculus and the intensity. So I went to our math department and said, hey, what is it about this? And they told me students coming from these public, let me say that again, these public schools are ready. Anybody else, don't count on it. Don't count on homeschoolers to be ready for math. Don't count on private schoolers to be math. But these three public schools that are in our area, students coming out of them do very well, and they can go right in through engineering and take care of the math stuff. So we started investigating these public schools, and we found out, like other good, high-quality public and private schools, they were using college-level textbooks. And we went and asked the math departments, and we said, why are you using college level textbooks? And their words to us, and that's this middle point here, college books versus high school books. They said the high school vendors come in here and talk about how their book is easier than the other, because, high schools are graded on pass rates. Our book is easier than their book. But in college, that we would never, ever, a university faculty would never do that. They would, so what happens is there's this divide that happens. And these public school teachers, or the heads of the math departments, if you will, of these public schools, were recognizing that. So they were going to college level textbooks. And as we've talked to public and private schools, we've just found that trend is just there. They tend to use college level material. At least they do not get books that are typically written for the high school market. So what's happened here is the homeschoolers are somewhat being left behind, because homeschoolers often are shooting at what the general, what's out there that's generally being sold to the public school market for high school. And what we're noticing now is even worse, is that the public schools and private schools are now doing these academies where they're actually teaching college level credit material in high school, so that when they come out of high school, they're actually 1 year into college material. Like we're seeing a lot of this in engineering academies, and they're coming out and they're just awesome students. I mean, they can do anything. They run circles around the typical engineering student. And so they're coming out more prepared. And we laugh at our nation's education and how poor maybe it is and things like this. But this has been going on for years. It's not a government thing. It's just the school systems have decided to step up the game. And so in your better neighborhoods, in your better school systems, and in your private school systems, they're doing these academies, and those students are far surpassing the typical school. And even in some of these inner city schools, we're finding these engineering academies. So they're coming out more prepared in math. So if you're in the homeschool world and you're kind of sticking to, hey, what the high schoolers are using, that's not the model anymore. That's not the model. So, and that's what we found. And that's how we accidentally ended up starting this company, because we had so much demand for people wanting something better. Now, the last point here is I just want to think about this. We're preparing our children to go into college. Why would we not use the same kind of things that they're going to see in college? Why would we water down what they're, why not use the books that they're going to see? I know that we have taught, or students have bought our products, and they've used our Algebra 2 or Trig book and our Calculus book, and they went into college into Calculus 2, and they're sitting there and they're assigned the same book that we used. They're just now using the next chapters, and they feel very comfortable because they already know it, where all the students around them are freaking out, maybe because it's new material. They're very comfortable. So they just transition right into that kind of thinking that goes on in the college level. So that's why we do it. And by the way, we are not the only company that sells in the homeschool market that do that. So I'm not saying we're the only solution here. As a matter of fact, I would say that there are multiple solutions for you as a parent to deal with that. And we'll talk about some of those in just a minute. So that's our key reason for the why. So now let's look at the typical math scope and sequence that's going on here. Is we have I'm sorry, I'm trying to get back, make sure I got anything happening here. This is typical, and you may find nuances to this, but these next two slides, we're going to talk about scope and sequence. The first is K through 6th grade, and I know if you are a classical schooler, you break this up a little bit differently, but we always think about reading, writing, and arithmetic. I think that's a stupid model because, and if you look back at the history of education, where some of those words, reading, writing, arithmetic, came from, what we teach in math in the K through 6 is drill, 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 reading, writing, arithmetic. And I'm just going to focus on the arithmetic because I'm not an expert in the others. Drill, 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 drill. That's really kind of a bad idea. What we need to be teaching kids to do is relate and understand relationships. And I'm going to call this algebra readiness. Because really, everything you do in K through 6 mathematically should only be geared at one thing: algebra. Algebra is not a dirty word. Algebra is taking 1 + 1 = 2 and making it what we call an abstraction, to where we can say 1 + what = 2. So we can understand relationships, that 3 times something is equal to 12. What is that something? And those relationships we deal with constantly in life. And that's all algebra is. It's just putting systems to those relationships and understanding what those are. So everything that you do is going to be focused on that. I'm going to talk about very specifics of algebra readiness right now. So if you've got kids in the K through 6th grade, there's very specific things that you should be focused on. And there are not that many of them, actually, to do that. In the 7th through 12th, what we're worried about is what we call abstractions, which is what I was just describing, taking basic math and saying there's unknowns that you've got to solve for. It's problem solving. I'm trying to figure out, how big of a fence to put around my yard, and I've got this much area, and there's this much per square feet. We do these kind of calculations constantly when we're cooking, when we're building, when we're doing anything where we're trying to make money as a business. These kind of things is problem solving, and that's all we're doing here. Is we're using this language to help us solve problems. Thus, math is a language. So that's really what we try to get to, is understanding the relationships in the earlier grades, and the older grades getting to understand the language better, and those relationships more of a problem solving aspect. And I'm not trying to oversimplify it. Obviously, some of the details are complicated, but usually they're complicated because we don't understand what we are trying to teach. We think it's all about linear equations and quadratic equations and roots and things like that. Well, no, it's about relationships. And when you step back and look at those relationships, all that makes more sense. And by the way, that's kind of how we teach our math, is we try to make sense out of it. And by the way, that's what the ACT and the SAT exam tests for. Do your students understand the relationships and the language? They're not testing, can you do math and can you say 12 times 12 is equal to what real fast? But do you understand the language? And that's where a lot of us as parents and a lot of us as teachers fail. We focused on drill. Okay. So here's the scope and sequence put to course name. Now, where do they fall in this? What grades are these? Basically, it's pre-algebra, algebra. I'm going to talk about that again in a minute. Geometry, algebra 2 or trig, and calculus. People will move these things up. People will say, hey, I've taken algebra. Shouldn't I take algebra 2 next? Should I take geometry after? And I'll tell you a little bit of why. This is not our invention. This is kind of typical. And I'll tell you why this is typical. First of all, the algebra, pre-algebra. Pre-algebra, all it typically is doing is it's a space saver. If you look at the typical school system, pre-algebra is a space saver, and it's covering loose ends. Remember, I said all those things you're doing to prepare for algebra, which we're going to look at in the next slide. All those things that you didn't get covered, we're going to cover them in pre-algebra. So a lot of students who take pre-algebra find it very repetitive and very boring. What we do is we just start algebra and just take it slow. So if you have a 7th grader and they've done, they're ready for algebra, and we'll talk about that again in a minute, then we would go ahead and put them in algebra and say, look, mom, we have these conversations all the time. Look, mom, if you take your son or your daughter and you take them in algebra, just take it slow. Don't worry about pace. They're either going to move quickly through some subjects and you're going to be done with algebra sooner than you thought, or they're going to take 2 years to do algebra. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. You can call it on your transcripts. You can call it pre-algebra and algebra if you want. You're the teacher. You have that leverage of saying, I'm calling it pre-algebra just because I'm using a book that's called algebra. Doesn't matter. I'm just, I'm going to do that. But really, because that's all it is. You're just trying to move them into some level of abstraction and understanding problem solving from the basic mathematics they've had. So that's our view. We don't use the word pre-algebra. We don't have a pre-algebra curriculum, and that's why. We looked at doing it, and it just became repetitive. Geometry, why geometry next? Now, geometry is another thing. Geometry's focus is teaching logic. Logic, which is, we know in our political system, in our business system, and in arguments that there's poor logic going on. And logic by itself is a course. It has nothing to do with math. Well, it does, but we don't typically see it in the math sequence. But what we're looking at is geometry combines teaching logic and spatial relationships. Squares, rectangles, circles, calculating the area of a room, calculating the height of a tree. It's basic relationships. If it has 4 sides, it's this. If it has 5 sides, it's this. If it has 6 sides, it's this. And just understanding some basic shapes stuff. Now, why does this matter? Because these shapes are with us in everything we do. These things are with us in every thing we do. So as I look at geometry and these logic and these relationships, that's really all we're focused on here is getting this. Now, why do we do this in between algebra and algebra 2? Here's the main reason. Is algebra 2 steps up the math a bit. And it becomes a little more complex, and you need to get a little bit of trigonometry, which is triangles, the relationships of triangles. Remember Pythagorean, well, remember the theorems of triangles. I can't speak right now. All the theorems of triangles and right triangles and all that kind of stuff. That's geometry. I mean, you do a little bit of an algebra, but that's geometry. And you really pick up the pace of that in algebra 2 or trig. So why we want to get our base of that. The other reason for the base of that is because the SAT and the ACT exams tend to use a lot of geometrical thinking, logic thinking, geometrical thinking in their exams. And so if you're coming up towards 10th and 11th grade and you haven't taken, if you've taken algebra and you feel like I got to hurry up and do algebra 2 with trigonometry, no, actually geometry is a key base. You need to get that. Now, the geometry we use, because a lot of people will say to us, well, they're going to forget all their algebra, and there is a little bit of that goes on. So the geometry we use and many others use is Jacob's geometry, which does a lot of algebra review embedded in the system. Now, there's algebra and geometry, so but that's the path. And then algebra 2 with trigonometry is basically applied math. It's taking the algebra to a little bit more complex level, more complex equations, more curvy equations, if you will, instead of straight line equations that may not matter to you right now, and more trigonometry, applied trigonometry. It's basically an introduction to what you would use in physics and some chemistry and some of those courses that is a very fundamental to that. Sometimes this course is called pre-calculus. You'll notice there's no pre-calculus on this slide. If you're going out there and taking algebra 2 with trigonometry and then you're taking a pre-calculus course, basically you are paying for the same thing twice. Yeah, there's a few little differences and they package it up differently, but a lot of the reason for algebra 2 and trigonometry and pre-calculus being different courses has to do with the market. And what I mean is school systems sometimes tell the publishers, I want algebra 2 with trig, and other school systems say we want pre-calculus. And so the publishers, being smart people as they are, is they change the label on the book. And literally, I can sit 2 Larson textbooks right side by side and look at the table of contents, and you'll find them almost identical. They change a few little nuances here and there to make school systems happy. But basically, they're the same thing. Now, sometimes what you will see is some people just teach algebra 2, and then they come back and teach pre-calculus because the algebra 2 by itself doesn't have the trigonometry. I mean, you can package this in all kinds of ways, and I see lots of public and private school systems that package this in various ways. It gets complicated what they do, but really this is all it is this building towards calculus. Calculus is about one thing. Well, actually, it's about 2 things. It's about change. Both of them are related to change. So where we're looking at relationships that are what we might call static relationships, usually in pre-algebra and algebra, such that you remember things like slope, rise over run is the slope. And so if you think about your roof and you go outside and you look at your roof and it's so many feet over and so many feet up, and that's rise over run, and we can calculate slope. So if you're breaking out in a sweat right now with me saying that, I get it. I'll shut up. But that's slope. Most of you have had that. Some of you are math geniuses and you remember all this stuff better than probably I do. When you change it from a straight line to a curved line where things are constantly changing, finding the slope and finding things like that. And the classic example is when I'm driving my car and I'm speeding up. I'm changing my speed. There's a relationship between distance, between my speed, and between the acceleration. And these things so I would say most of calculus is based upon movement. It's based upon change. And of course, we know our whole world is changing. The planets are in motion. They're changing. The stock market is in motion financially. It's changing. So financial analysis is based upon calculus. The entire courses in physics and astronomy, anything like that, is based upon calculus. It's rates of change. It's really not that hard of a course. Now, I will say that calculus is another course that freaks people out coming into university. The hard part about calculus is usually this, and this is faculty member after faculty member after faculty member at a university in engineering tell me this. Calculus is not hard for students. The problem is they never understood algebra. So let me say it again. Calculus is not hard for students. They never understood algebra. Did they pass algebra? Yes. They made an A. They made an A in geometry. They made an A in algebra 2 or trig, but they never understood what they were doing because they were drilled. They were drilled. Just like we said, the math tables understand 1 times 1, 1 times 2, 1 times 3, 1 times 4, and we do these drills. We do the same thing in algebra and geometry and trigonometry, and and it doesn't work. It starts to fall apart. It falls apart immediately on the SAT and ACT because the SAT and ACT intentionally test your student. Do they really understand, or are they just doing drill? And they separate that. So I'm saying all this as these courses build in complexity. They're not necessarily harder concepts. It's a little bit more manipulation and math and stuff like that. But understanding the fundamentals is key. So if you're calling me and saying, hey, my daughter didn't do too well in algebra, but we're going to just move on because we're about way behind and we need to move on, you're not really helping the game. You need to make sure she understands. Does that mean you need to make sure she understands? It doesn't mean she has to repeat the whole grade. But you need to go back and make sure she understands what she's doing. That may be simple things. Usually our support line that we do for our courses, we get questions all the time. And usually students get, and in each one of these courses, I can almost pick to you places they get hung up. They're simple things. And it seems overwhelming. It seems overwhelming to the moms and the dads we talk to because they've long since not done math or they don't have time because they're busy. And usually what we find is it seems they're overwhelmed and, oh my gosh, Johnny can't do math and this math course isn't working. And so we get on there and we work with Johnny, and it's one concept. And we had a lady just the other day, her and her daughter were emailing us and say, I'm just totally lost with this whole trigonometry thing in geometry that we were doing in geometry, the trigonometry part. I'm just totally lost and we've lost it all. What do? We start over. We can't work any of these problems in this chapter. And so our support person, she just said, let's just do problem 1 and let me walk you through it. And the girl literally emailed us back after problem 1 and said, oh, I get it now. I can do them all. And we find that over and over again. Simple concepts hang us up. And if you're a parent, that's frustrating because you don't, especially if you don't have time to explore that simple concept. But maybe I'm digressing a bit, but these are questions that we get so often. So this is the typical scope and sequence, and hopefully you understand why this is being used. This is public schools, private schools, and most schools are using something like this. And by the way, if they're getting tricky with the scope and sequence, let me just remind you, calculus was invented a long time ago, or discovered, if you will. You can mix this up anyway. There's not really a lot of new discoveries in math that your students are going to be doing. Science, maybe. The basic language of math, no. So mixing this up and looking for creative ways, no. Yeah, don't get caught up in that. That's not happening. How do you know if your daughter or your son is ready for algebra? Here's the thing, and this is in the sheet I've given you in the download. I believe it's going to be on page 2. It's a little more detailed than what I have here. But here's the basic things they need to be able to know. Computing, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, raising the powers. Can they do those? Fractions, simplifying them, multiplying them, dividing them, greatest common divisor, greatest least, I mean, all those things that probably, I hate these words. I know what they mean, but they sound complicated because I remember being in school and thinking, oh God, I can't stand doing that. Adding, subtracting, fractions. I mean, look, cooking, using cups, using, okay, this is a half of a cup and a third of the cup, those kind of things. Fractions are all around us. Don't get caught up in that. And by the way, this is how my wife teaches our sons. In the first couple of grades, especially the first 3 grades, we don't do any math sheets. We do none. This is not my design. This is just her discovery of just show the kids the real world. Have them cook with you, go out with chalk and write numbers down, do stuff, calculate the number of bricks going over, calculate and count the bricks going over, count the bricks going up, and calculate the area by the number of, she does just simple everyday things that you do and I do You maybe think, hey, I'm not a math genius, but you do these things. You do them and you don't recognize that you're doing them. Teach your kids them, and you're actually preparing them for algebra. So fractions, decimals the same thing. Adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, converting, fractions, vice versa, doing percentages, same stuff. Fraction, I mean, basically this is all numbers, right? It's whole numbers, fractions, decimals, which fractions and decimals are kind of the same thing. Measurement, English and standard units, converting between the two of them. That's, you are going to run into that. Shapes, we would call this geometry. Finding the perimeter, or the how long it is around, finding the area. Basic polygons. Polygon's a fancy name. What polygons mean is multi-sided figures. A triangle is a polygon. It's got 3 sides. A square is a polygon. It's got 4 sides. So these are fancy names, but kids know these things. They got little blocks. If you got those little wood blocks for your kids, or however old they are, you'll see all these shapes, and the kids can put them together and do amazing things. They're doing geometry. And all you have to do is just bring the words to it and get them to understand what's going on. Finding the area and the circumference of a circle. Pi. I don't know if you know the pi, the number 3.14. The pi is a relationship. It's a fraction that represents the circumference of a circle and the radius of a circle, the diameter of a circle. You can look that up later. We won't bother you that. But we actually, Pi Day, every year, March the 14th, 314, and there's this Pi Day, and so my sons are we made 100 pies, I think, in the house, and we're probably still eating some of them. But we had all these pies in the house, but they understood, because we just reiterated it over and over again in a fun way, this circular relationship. Quite honestly, I did not understand that relationship until I was in engineering school. Probably until I had to teach it. That's when we tend to learn stuff. The last thing here that when you're ready for algebra is basic problem solving, words to symbols, moving from words to numbers in relationship. So when it says, you read a sentence that says the sum of these two numbers, that the kids can say that's a plus sign, or the difference between these two numbers, that's a minus sign, or the product of these two numbers, the ratio of these two numbers, twice as much. Those kind of statements in sentences that they will know, oh, that means this. Now, I'm not meaning complicated stuff. I'm just saying, basically, do they understand how to do these kind of things? That's the kind of issues that we want to do. You understand how to do this. People will oftentimes also ask us to do it in calculators. Yeah, I do calculators. Don't let them be dependent upon calculators, but sure, they should know how to use a calculator. They should not get dependent upon them. When I got to add 3 plus 3, I got to do calculators. Use your fingers if you have to, but not the calculator. Okay, so that's how you know if you're ready for algebra. I will be, let's see. Let's go on and hit the other question. And feel free, again, if you have any questions, to throw them in the chat box. If I'm not hitting anything that you need, or you need clarification, please feel free to shoot us a chat, something, and we'll just address it here on audio. I only have so much I can show you on this. Again, the download goes a lot more into detail about this, and it gives you these points in a lot more detail. What do we look like when we started homeschooling, and both my wife and I being engineers, and we knew we needed to teach math? The first thing we did was what probably most of homeschoolers do. We grabbed Saxon Math, the most popular dominant math course, and we started trying to teach it to our daughters. It might have worked okay for, I think, our 6th grader or 5th grader at the time, but it really fell apart. We saw it fall apart very rapidly for our high schooler. So we started looking at what are we looking for? And here's the bullet list. And basically, you're looking to make sure that the book teaches concepts, conceptually what's going on. That why are we doing what we're doing? In other words, why are we trying to calculate the slope of this line? Who cares? Conceptually, what's going on? Why does it matter? That's to me, that's critically important that we understand that. the index and context. And I mean, just like in a book, a math book, and this is one of the reasons Saxon fell apart for us in high school years, because knowing what we know about math is it does this integrated approach. Probably works great for the younger years, but as the high school years, when you start needing reference and you need to go back and figure out how you do this stuff, you're much more using your math book as a resource than as a guide to teach you. Saxon's probably more of the guide to teach you, and you need a resource. You need to have an index and a table of contents so you can look back. Okay, how do I calculate the area of a triangle? Flip back there, and boom, there it is as a reference. Solutions. Obviously, we need solutions. We need examples, some examples in textbook that show us how to do at least thing. Some books get crazy in these, some don't. We need some problems to work. These three might be obvious. We need real world applications. Let me stop there for just a minute. When we developed a geometry course, all of our customers were asking us to develop a geometry course. We did not have those. We started buying. I still have a ton of geometry books here. Most of them are terrible because they have nothing but lines and shapes, and they have no connection to reality. Harold Jacobs in his geometry we opened it, and it's all about the geometry of the stars, the geometry of buildings, the geometry of molecules, the geometry of a kid building, riding a bicycle, the geometry. I mean, it applies. And as one student said to this mom emailed us, and she said, my son started geometry, and he looked up and said, oh, so math does have stuff to do with the real world. One of the things I want to see, I'm an engineer. Math is a language that describes the world. I want the book to help me as a parent with that. I don't want to have to work too hard to explain to my son or daughter why this math relates to the world. I hope the author of the textbook will help me by having some applied real world problems. Every problem doesn't have to be applied, but at least when you're talking about triangles, show us something applied to the real world, why they care. Oddly enough, every single math textbook should have applications from business, applications from physics, applications from biology, applications in cooking, because they're there. They're everywhere. So teach your students it's the language of the real world by showing them real world applications. The last point here is just student usability. Now, let me just say the student usability thing. We will say this varies. We have a curriculum, and I'll just tell you, there's some kids that will just look at our curriculum and says, it just doesn't click for me, Mom. That's okay. I think it varies. One of the things that we want to do especially in high school subjects, and maybe even younger than that, is get our students to help us pick the curriculum. Now, with some guidance, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But if there's 3 different math courses, and they're generally going to get you to the same point, but they have a different take, they have a different textbooks, they have different things, let the kids kind of be part of the game. They take some ownership, and partly they get to say, Mom, this relates to me better than this. I get this. And there's no single answer. There are some potholes we want to avoid, but there's no necessarily single answer to deal with there. Okay, let's see. Let's drive into a couple things, and I got a couple of questions over here. I'm gonna answer during this next section. Here's some courses I'm going to say are not college prep. Now, if you want to email me and blast me for these, that's fine. I get it. Let me give you this. You can give me Johnny and Susie. Hear me clear. You can give me Johnny and Susie, and you can throw mud at them. You can throw you can throw any of these things I'm showing you here at them, and you can say, my son or daughter did this, and now they have a PhD in mathematics from MIT. I get it. I understand. There's some students who can get through anything, and some students relate to anything. So what I'm generally saying is these courses, as I look at what we would use for college prep material, these aren't it. And this isn't not just my opinion. Now, Saxon, I'm going to set aside for just a minute. But the first ones here are not just my opinion. They're opinions of other people who understand math and people who are in the business. And some people will mention in the next slide, actually, that are in the business of doing this type of stuff, that it's not prepared. We have had private school systems tell us that they've dropped some of these textbooks in high school because they weren't delivering. Again, they would have students that excelled, went to college, everything worked fine. But in general, overall, they did not deliver. Okay, let me stop and kind of throw and hit some of these questions. So Andrea here says, we did Saxon in 8th grade. Should we redo algebra? I'm going to say no. You should not redo algebra. What I would look at is, are you prepared? Did your student do okay? I'm going to draw a line a little bit between Algebra 1 and everything else, because most curriculum do pretty decent in Algebra 1. Even if you're using video text or teaching text, I think in Algebra 1, if they get it and they understand it, you're pretty good. Because Algebra 1 stops in various places and it's going to be made up in Algebra 2. Let me say this, though. If your son or daughter gets into geometry or Algebra 2 and runs into a subject, maybe calculating, I'm not going to use it, but a particular math type of things, and they can't do it because they didn't have it in Algebra 1, it doesn't mean you should punt and go back. As a matter of fact, we do this all the time. We go back to a curriculum called, my name just left me. It's worksheets, and maybe somebody will remind me of what I'm always recommending, but it's worksheets that she has that we can go and do. Maybe my wife will throw that in here. That you can go and you can download that's just one sheet. You can get one concept and you can be done with it. And so just because you miss a particular concept is not a killer thing going on there. Now, the art of problem solving, Lois, you're asking that. I'm not an expert in that. I don't know. I'm not real sure. Math Mammoth. Thank you, Leah. Somebody's pointing out to me that Math Mammoth is the program that we go back to often, and we have no ownership or anything in Math Mammoth, but we'll go to, and she just has little download sheets that we can get to fill in any gaps in math. Let me hit a couple of these other questions here. Okay, Kelly, I think we've already answered your question. So, yeah, and if you want to send me something and we'll look at it, and obviously we don't have our hands on every material in the world, but we'll try to look at it a little bit for you. And if I can't answer, such as the art of problem solving, we'll try to get you a halfway decent answer by taking a look at that. Okay, let's hit this one other Saxon question here. I'm gonna say Saxon in the lower grades is probably okay. I'm not a huge fan of it because it's so much work. Saxon will just kill your student in work and may make them hate math. We talk to a lot of students who hate Saxon. Now, if that's not your son or daughter, if they're okay with it, I think in the lower grades you're probably okay. It's not a downfall. It seems to fall apart for me and for a lot of people. And once you get out past Algebra 1, when you get into the more complex stuff, it just really doesn't connect. And the reason is because it's doing a circular approach. And there is a point in time you need to just take one subject at a time. Let's deal with triangles. Let's get a full understanding of triangles. Now let's go do circles. Let's get a full understanding. You kind of need that approach because you know what? They're not using Saxon in college. We just don't do that. And it's a formula that I think probably works with K through 6 and it wears itself out after that. Yeah, I think, and Rachel, you're saying if you use Saxon, can you transition to algebra? Yes. I think Jacob's algebra is a great thing. And let me just say this on the, I'm going to say two things about Jacob's algebra for those of you who are interested in Jacob's algebra, but is you don't have, everything does not have to be perfect. And I think that was one of the things that we ran into is when we were homeschooling. And then as we talk to parents over, we feel like we have to be perfect now, but yet if you know anything about the school system, and some of you are school teachers, you know that everything is not perfect. Even at the university, it's never perfect. We never finish books. We never do everything in class we hope to do. That's just reality, you know. So you're gonna have holes, and you're gonna have things that don't get covered, and you know, you kind of use your judgment and your students' judgment. By the way, you're teaching them to learn, right? So they ought to be able to look at a book and say, yeah, I'm kind of ready for this, or I'm not. And that's, to me, that's one of the things that you want to do. Okay. Shelley, you're saying he hates math, loves science, couldn't figure out why. Yes, science. As a matter of fact, Jay Weil, some of you are familiar with Apologia, Jay Weil has an article, and I think it's on our Facebook page. We posted it, where he talks about the relationship between math and science. Oh, math is the language of science. There's just no other way to put it. If you get into college physics, you're going to be deep into calculus. There's just no other way to put it. Let me throw this one thing out about those that are caring about Jacob's algebra. And you may go to our website or anybody else's website, and it says the textbook is sold out. That is correct. Harold Jacobs, the current algebra book that's out on the market, is in the middle of a reprint. And there's all kinds of reasons we won't bore you with, but Harold has been working on this. There is somebody, and I can't publicly say right now who is going to take it and republish it. It's in the works. It will probably be published by fall sometime, and I'm going to say September. Again, I can't lock anybody down on that because I'm not in control of that. But if you're looking at doing it and you have a used copy, or you got somebody else's copy, or you can go to eBay or Amazon and buy a used copy, it's not going to be any different. Harold's not changing anything in the content. There's going to be a little bit of layout changes, but he's not going to be able to change any content in the course. And I know we talk to him often, and he's not going to change anything in it. We're talking to the current publisher that's about to take that over, or that's working on taking it over. So if you've got an old copy, or your other son or daughter did it, and you say, I want them to have the current stuff, it's not going to be any different. The solutions manual is going to be the same. We publish the solutions manual right now, so it's not going to be any different. And so, but if you're wanting to do that and you think it's going out of business and never going to do, no, it's about to come back at full life, and mostly because it's such a popular book in the homeschool world. Okay, let me hit. I'm gonna hit some of these other questions here in just a minute, but let me jump into what I would consider college prep material. And I'm just, again, these lists are not all conclusive, and these lists might even, I'm not sure I've spelled Forrester right there, but forgive me if I haven't. Matter of fact, I know I haven't spelled Forrester right. Chalk Dust. Chalk Dust is the one company that I know does something very similar to us. Dana, and I forget his name. I know Dana. I forget his last name. It slipped me, but college level textbooks, no question about it. He does an awesome job. Some people don't like him because he does too much detail, and we get to the point faster, and therefore some people like him better than us because of that. But it's certainly an awesome curriculum. It's similar to our curriculum. He just uses different textbooks. Harold Jacobs has a algebra and geometry course, not his math for human endeavor. That's not a college-based, that's more of a field math course. But they're high school books technically, but they're still good for the market. And so is Forrester. Again, I've misspelled it. Forrester, you may see if you look at Veritas Press recommends Harold Jacobs algebra and geometry, or at least they did until they got into this little bind with the textbook. But they'll be recommending algebra and geometry. And in Algebra 2 with Trig, they went to Forster. And the way they did that, they called Harold Jacobs and said, you don't have an Algebra 2 with Trig book. Which one should we use? Forster was his student that wrote this book. It's a good book, his Algebra 2 with Trig, and even his algebra. They're good books. They're college. They are high school books. If you look at his Algebra 2 with Trig book versus ours, you can tell they're different. Ours is actually more fun, not because we wrote it. We didn't. But even though they're high school material, they're good things. And so now, is this list all inclusive? Absolutely not. There's some stuff that you may find that's in there. I'm just kind of giving you a thing. Khan Academy's material, a lot of people don't like. They do an excellent job of teaching. They don't have a complete thing. They don't have the books. They don't have the problems. They don't have it all packaged up. Some people don't like Khan Academy because there's some worldview issues that come in there, and there are. But as teaching the math, if you go to their algebra course or their geometry, the various courses that they have, they do good. A lot of people will use our product or Chalk Dust's product or somebody else's products, and they'll use Khan Academy to kind of fill a void. Sometimes we even refer to them if we get questions and somebody says, I don't understand how to do this problem. We'll say, Khan does a great job answering that question for you, and here's the answer. So these are college prep. There's no perfect, these lists could go on and on and on and on and on, obviously, and we will never know all of them, and probably neither will you, but this hopefully will give you some scope of what to think about. So let me hit, since we're getting a bunch of questions in these areas, let's see what's where I am here. Well, let me just throw this one other slide here, and then we'll go. Some other college prep material that we like. Pick the college of your choice. Now, this is a trick that we often will do with parents, especially that their son or daughter is about to head off to university. They know what school they're going to. They know they're going to go into business school, for instance, at the University of Texas. So, and they're like, we want to have him prepared. So we have this conversation a lot. We say, go to the University of Texas, go to the department, the business department, and go find the chairman of that department and have a chat with them over email, over the phone, or if you can, go sit down with him. I want my son to be prepared. In most business schools, by the way, they have to take calculus. That may shock some of you that maybe have business degrees and you didn't have to do that in the past. That's the trend is generally calculus now. Schools vary, but so you're going to find out they need to take calculus probably. What books do you use? What do you recommend? So one way we do it is we say, why don't you just go find the book that they're using at that university that the faculty are going to be expecting you to kind of learn from, especially if you're advanced, if you're taking calculus and you're a little bit advanced and your student is a fast learner, pick the book they use and learn it. I mean, we can go to the math department at UAB, the university I'm with. They actually tell you not only the books they use, you can download their exams. So you'll know if you know the material. You can buy their textbooks. You can go over to Amazon and go to Amazon and let me show you real quick. Well, I don't really have time here, but we can go to Amazon. We'll answer the questions first. We'll go to Amazon and click on the use link. So if the book is out in the the 9th edition at the university, like one we looked at the other day, go to the 8th, or look up on Amazon, look up their 8th edition. You all know the game. The books are $250 for math books typically now. So if you're going to buy a new one or even a used one, you're going to pay a heavy price. Go to the 8th edition or maybe the 7th edition. You know they're the same material. They just repackaged it for resale for the classroom because they have a market. That's the game. So go to the 7th edition or the 6th edition, click on used and buy a used textbook. You may be able to buy the book for $5 or $20 and get the book and do this. So a lot of times this is material that we use to prepare for college. Obviously, if they're of that age and they can if you want to just go to the university and take the course, that's fine too. Obviously, if you're going to a university and taking their course, they're college prep. It should go without saying. Not necessarily a junior college. if your son or daughter is going to the University of Texas and you think I'm going to go to the junior college and get their math credit and get it out of the way, make sure you talk to the college he or she's going to first to make sure they see that. A lot of times in our School of Engineering, we will not accept mathematics that comes from junior college. Even if they took calculus, we will not accept it into our engineering school. It's not the same thing. It's kind of taught, in some cases, it's taught at a high school level versus a college level. So let me say and by the way, here's our course content, but let me try to hit some of these questions for you. Stacy saying my son took algebra 1 and 2 in public school using Pearson and section geometry at home this year. I would probably, I mean, it sounds to me, based upon that what they're calling algebra 2 would be hard. Well, let me give you a fast way to do this. Go to our website, click on our Algebra 2 with Trig tab on the left. And when you do, you're going to find, if you go down, let me just look at my site and tell you. Maybe I can just share this screen with you and tell you, just so you know. This is a trick that some of you can use for, let me see if I can get to the right page here. This is a trick that we tell parents all the time. And I'm looking at our Algebra 2 with Trigonometry page. We use a book that's published. Now, I don't know why the author does this, but it's awesome that he does. And you can say, download the text. Sometimes they have it turned off, so hopefully not. But if you go down here, you can say you can download the text. Usually the entire text is online. And there it is. It's McGraw-Hill. There's the textbook. And you can click on Student Center. And you can click on, you can see the chapter. You can actually see the text of the textbook. And I'm just going to say go on chapter 1. And so you can actually download the entire text in PDF. It's awesome. I mean, if you wanted to do the whole course and not buy the book, hey, this is what. And hey, if you're looking at what's an equivalent Algebra 2 or Trig College book, you can just look at this, the one online. And by the way, some other publishers are doing the same thing. But here's what we do. We say our Algebra 2 with Trig covers chapters 1 through 8. So as a bare minimum, so what we do is we tell parents, and Stacy, people in your situation, we would say, have your son or daughter go take these practice quizzes. So there's not a whole bunch of them. It's not overwhelming. You just say, I mean, it's good practice. Say, Johnny, okay, let's just start with quiz 1. Go take the quiz. It's online. It grades itself. And we have them do that. And then to say, when, if he gets to chapter 1 and he does awesome, chapter 2 does awesome, what you're going to do is you're going to find out, where does it fall apart? Where does he get to where he doesn't know what's going on? And then that kind of gives you a guide. So what some people will do is they'll buy this course from us and they'll say, well, my son or daughter already took, let me get back to it. He already took chapters 1 through 4 quizzes, and he broke it down in chapter 5. So they'll buy the book and the material and start in chapter 5. In your case, if you're moving from a public school system into a private school, to a home school, a private school, or some other system, that's kind of what I would do. Would I worry too much about section geometry? Probably not. You're going to probably find some holes, but the holes aren't going to be in the material. It's going to be in the understanding. And always have your student learn the material with understanding. Now, how do you do that? Let me tell you the trick that works for me is have them, and Stacy or Rachel or me, even if you're not a math person, make your son or daughter explain to you the concept. As we always say, explain to the concept so grandma can understand it. Now, hopefully grandma's not a PhD in math, but I think you get the idea. If they can explain to you, okay, here's what we're doing, and here's the math I'm doing, and you can say, why are you doing that? And if your son or daughter can explain the why, they get it. They're perfect. They may make math mistakes and stuff like that, but they're going to do awesome on the ACT and the SAT exam. So that's one way of making sure they get past that, what I call cookbook math. Just do the math, just do the problems that sometimes I think Saxon and some of these others do, as opposed to understanding conceptual math. And we just have them to do it that way. So I'm just looking here at the questions. Do we need, we did find it necessary to do sex and we did find it necessary to do sex in Algebra 1, 2 to transition to Jacob since I felt the previous section lesson did not teach the concepts. Okay. And I would say, you know, and this is more of a comment because this is not really a question, but I think it's important. I mean, you're the teacher. It's important not to get too caught up in curriculum. I know we're selling curriculum. Don't get too caught up in that conceptually. And the handout we gave you will kind of goes over, here's the things you need to know in each course. You can drill down and nitpick courses. Yes. So if you have a Saxon book or some book, or maybe it's an old book that you had that you did, you don't have to necessarily go out and rebuy curriculum. That's one reason we like Math Mammoth, because you can spend $10, you know, $3 on some of the downloads, and it's cheap, it's effective, and it fills in the holes. Khan Academy is also excellent for that, because, you know, I don't really want to go spend $100 or $200 or $300 or $500 for textbooks and a material for my son or daughter just to fill a gap if I don't have to. That takes a little bit of experimentation with us, and I'm sure it does with you. Math Mammoth author recommends The Art of Problem Solving for Algebra. And Lauren, that may be as a supplement. Now, I'm going to say we know the author of Math Mammoth, and I don't necessarily know all of her philosophy, but I do know what she puts together in Math Mammoth is great. So, but I would suspect that might be as a supplement of how do you solve problems. But again, we'll be glad to look into that for you. Interesting to hear your comments on drill, and the weight of Saxon assignments. Drop the drills and just had my kids do the worksheets. One of the things that's one of the things we found about Saxon that students just hate is just way too much work. Our rule of thumb in math is about an hour a day. I mean, you know, maybe that's too much, maybe that's too little, and obviously you're going to have to make your adjustments. But when we were doing Saxon, it would just kill them. It's just too much work. Is it okay to do Jacob's algebra in 2 years instead of pre-algebra? Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's what we did. We did with one son. He did Jacob's algebra in 2 years. And we have a lot of people that buy our products that do that. And they intentionally, what they do is take the syllabus, and where it says they're supposed to be done something in week 1, they say that's week 1 and 2, and they just write on the syllabus and change it to do that. Interesting things happen with our son, and probably with yours, is don't get too caught up in even the course. Our son would say, okay, I'm tired of algebra. Can I go do geometry? He wasn't done with algebra. And so my wife said, sure, go pick up and do some geometry and do that. And so he was kind of doing 3 courses at one time, and made us a little crazy because we were not real sure where this was going. But if you look at some of the famous mathematicians, as a matter of fact, famous scientists, they're known for just picking up courses and just kind of learning them. You've got to have some structure, I realize, as a parent, but to us, that's one of the joys of homeschooling, is you can develop the structure along the line or as you go. Okay, I think we may have, let's see, there's 1 or 2 other questions I had that came in via email. What about K through 6? Somebody is asking, and I won't get into all the detail of their question, but on K through 6, I think I've addressed that. Is I would look at the algebra prep material and just focus on learning those things. Math Mammoth is probably great there. If you want to use some curriculums or worksheets, great. That's the way to do it. And here's another question I had gotten via email. After pre-calculus, should they take calculus or stats? Should they continue on with high school math or take community college math? If college, which one's the right one? After pre-calculus or algebra 2 or trig, I would be looking at calculus as your next thing. if we have a lot of students who get through calculus, and many of them will come back and do calculus 2 with us, especially if they're heading to a STEM, a science or technology type career or engineering. They'll go ahead and do calculus 2 with us. Statistics is another very popular college course now in the sciences and the business curriculum. We don't have a statistics course, but we are finding some people do that. Again, my only rule on college math and community colleges is be wise. You know, if you know what university you're going to, talk to them. You know, most of them support that kind of thing if it works, because they know it's at a lower cost, lower risk, smaller classrooms, all those kind of things. They're probably the chair of a department is probably not going to tell you not to do that. So I would, but always, I mean, we always think about keep the end goal in mind. If the end goal is to get into the University of Texas, then be thinking and talking to them about what does it take to get into the University of Texas. And of course, we have the philosophy of talking about what happens after I get the degree, but that's another webinar. If we go through the practice quizzes for your algebra 2 and trig and he does well, then go on to calculus. He is 12 and going into 8th grade. Yeah, I probably would. Stacy, what I might do though is I might have him go ahead and take the go ahead and not just do chapters 1 through 8. Go ahead and do chapters up to. There's a couple extra chapters sometimes that, as I might just have him do the quizzes on there. And if he's that gifted, he may not need any videos. He may just be able to download the book and use some Khan Academy and do some stuff. But yeah, plow ahead. I mean, assuming obviously you got time is on your side, so let him explore. One of the courses that we have done or we haven't done, but we've encouraged a lot of parents to do, may not fit you, Stacy, but a lot of people who took whose sons or daughters don't really like math and they kind of want to break and they're younger maybe and they've been through enough stuff, is take some time and have them explore math or have them explore a career option, which is a product we're getting ready to come out with, you know, how to be successful in college and in life. But the other is have them maybe explore math in their hobby. If they're into music, you know, how does math relate? In other words, help them spend some time instead of digging down, doing equations, solving problems, help them see how math relates to the things they care about. If they're into baseball or music or video games, where's the math play in that? And that helps bring it real, you know, that they see that there's a point. Again, it's a language and they can see it's used for things that they really care about. And so, Stacy, you might, if you have somebody that's this son's that's kind of gifted, that's into stuff like that, you're actually training him to be somewhat in the engineering sciences world by doing some of that. Okay, I think if we haven't answered anything in here, we're actually a little over time, but if we haven't answered anything, please feel free. You know, you can again shoot me an email. Let me jump back over here to the screen. It is in the download. Over to it so we can be. The download again was at AskDrCallahan/webinar. It's over there on the side. I'm going to put it over there one more time, just as a refresher for some of you who might need it, if I can spell. And here's how to contact us. You know, one of the things we spend a lot of time doing is answering questions. Excuse me, I should hit present to everyone. One of the things we do is answer questions to parents. That's why we're doing these webinars. We will be doing a webinar every month. Let's see if I spelled that correctly. Yes, I did. Okay, and there's the link to the webinar, which has the downloadable stuff, which again is a little more detail than what I've given you here. It's not the slides, but it's, you know, pages and pages. It looks like it's a 11 pages of content that basically will kind of walk you through some of this stuff. Actually, I'm looking at the wrong handout. It's not, so if you're looking at it and it's not 11 pages, it's 10 pages of content. So that kind of gives you and walks you through some of this material. Thank you all so much for joining us. If we can help again, there's our email at dcallahan at dcallahan@askdrcallahan.com or Facebook, probably one of the fastest ways to hit us is Facebook. Facebook. If you're on Facebook, and just ask Dr. Callahan. And be sure to like us on Facebook while you're there. Thank you all so much for your time.